This man right here is Hue Jackson, and he might legitimately be, honest to God, the worst head coach in NFL history. No exaggeration, no recency bias. This man might truly be the worst coach to ever step foot on an NFL sideline. I know people throw out that phrase a lot, that someone is the worst of all time and is the worst at something. And it feels as if that phrase loses all meaning because it's used too often. But with Hue Jackson, he's one of the few coaches, like Urban Meyer and Bobby Petrino, where you can throw that label out and you have a legitimate argument that I'm not going to fight you too much on. When he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, in his very first season, the man went 1-15, and then somehow followed that up with an 0-16 season, going 1-31 over his first 2 seasons in charge. And if that wasn't bad enough, he started off the 2018 season winning just 2 of his first 8 games before being fired, which is shocking that he was given a 3rd season. And then, with everything else the same minus the head coach, the Browns almost finished above 500 and rallied over the second half of the year to be one of the better teams in football down the stretch. If you go 1-31 over a 2-year stretch, you're doing just about everything wrong. There have been a lot of bad coaches in NFL history, but there have only been a few bad head coaches in NFL history, and Hue Jackson was really freaking bad. And if you want to know a prime example of that and see just how incompetent he was at his job, while I can't show literally every single game he coached because there are limits to how long videos can be on YouTube, this one from 2011, when he was the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, might give you the best idea. This one from 2011 showed everything wrong with Hue Jackson and how the man had no business being on an NFL sideline. Because during week 4 of the 2011 season, with his Oakland Raiders taking on the New England Patriots, Jackson decided to do something so mind-numbingly stupid with the absolute worst explanation possible that it deserves a deep dive nearly a decade and a half later. If you wanted to beat the vaunted New England Patriots dynasty, don't do what Hue Jackson did, because it's not going to work out well for you, and very obviously, it did not here, thanks to some of the most stubborn coaching you'll ever see in your life. Because this is the story behind Hue Jackson's worst and dumbest game ever, if I could only pick one game to choose from. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, hype up that video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one they may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for hyping up the video, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the coaching decision by Hue that left every Raiders fan feeling blue. Before I break down what happened here, and just how insane it was, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, as well as the 2 key players involved that are going to help make Hue Jackson's coaching in this one all the more asinine. It's October 2nd, 2011. It's week 4 of the NFL season, and as we're wrapping up the first quarter of the year, we've got an AFC battle on our hands over at the Coliseum in Oakland, between the Oakland Raiders and the New England Patriots. Both these teams enter the game at 2-1, but no one's really giving the Raiders much of a chance to win, and it's not exactly hard to see why. One sideline has Bill Belichick, the other sideline has Hue Jackson. New England was coming off of a season where they were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and entered this game having already scored over 100 points, being second in the entire NFL in points scored, while the Raiders were a bottom 5 team in football in points allowed, who were allowing a whopping 410 yards per game over their first 3 games. Basically, even though both teams were 2-1, they got to that point by playing very different opponents from a quality standpoint on paper. And while you could count on the Patriots to keep this up, because they always keep it up, I don't know how many people were counting on the Raiders to do the same. And considering their defensive struggles, especially in the passing game, where they were allowing close to 300 yards per game, and where they would finish the season in the bottom quarter of the league in just about every major pass defense category, not many people had the Raiders winning this one. The reason why? Well, there were many reasons, but on the other side, you have this man right here, wide receiver Wes Welker. Many people believe, and rightfully so, that if Welker didn't have some terrible injury luck by the end of his career, that he would currently be in the Hall of Fame, because the man truly was great. Everyone knew at this stage that Welker was one of the best receivers in football, and the 2011 season was no exception, as after making it to the Pro Bowl in 3 consecutive seasons and leading the league in receptions twice in the previous 4 years with the Pats, he was picking up right where he left off. Eventually, Welker would end the year with a league-best 122 catches, a career-high 1,569 yards, and as a man who would be named the first-team All-Pro by the Associated Press. But 3 weeks into the 2011 season, as great as those end-of-season numbers were, the man was on an insane pace. He had 31 catches for 458 yards and 4 touchdowns. Those numbers are an absolutely ungodly pace, as over the course of his 16-game season, if he kept that up, that would have come out to 165 catches for 2,443 yards and 20 touchdowns. In Welker's most recent game, a 34-31 loss to the Buffalo Bills, in maybe the best game of the entire regular season, and the game where Ryan Fitzpatrick truly became a legend, Welker had 16 catches for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he was entering this Raider game red hot. And to give you another idea of how good Welker was to open up the season, he had 31 catches after 3 weeks, at a time when second place, running back Matt Forte, had 22 catches, and had 458 yards at a time when only 3 other receivers had over 300 yards, and no one even had close to 400. To start off 2011, Wes Welker was in a league of his own. So you would figure that the Raiders would put their best cornerback on him throughout the entirety of the contest. You'd figure that the most logical thing to do would be to put this guy right here, their second-round pick from the 2005 NFL Draft, on Welker and see what happened. This man right here is Stanford Routt. And even though the Raiders' secondary seemed to take a hit on paper in the offseason, with Nnamdi Asomugha leaving the team in free agency to join the Philadelphia Eagles, in one of the most infamous free agency moves of all time, they weren't too worried because at least they had Routt. Yes, Routt was a penalty magnet at times. The pass interference flag was basically thrown because of him. But the man could also cover his butt off and was super fast. Now, was he worth what the Raiders paid him, which was a 5-year contract worth roughly $55 million? Absolutely positively not. And everyone except for Al Davis seemed to think the Raiders were crazy for giving him this kind of money and this kind of length. But to be fair to Routt, much like Welker, he was off to a good start in 2011. Yes, he was still getting called for penalties, but he was also breaking up a fair number of passes and even had an interception during one of their games against the Buffalo Bills. You'd figure that for that Raiders-Patriots game, that you'd be seeing a lot of number 26 on the Raiders covering number 81 on the Patriots. Their number 1 against the Patriots' number 1. However, as you're watching this game and seeing the Patriots absolutely destroy the Raiders, you might be noticing something odd. And that is the fact that there is no Stanford Routt to be found anywhere. Wes Welker is catching all of these passes and is moving the Patriots down the field with ease. And Welker is going off like he's been doing just about every game as of late. And the Raiders' best corner is nowhere to be found. The guy that they paid $55 million to was not covering Wes Welker. Routt didn't play poorly this game. They just didn't have Routt on Welker. And this seemed like an odd strategy, not just in real time, but also with the benefit of hindsight, seeing as the Patriots won the game by a final score of 31-19, with it being 31-13 with just 30 seconds left. So the game was not as close as the final score might indicate. And with Wes Welker putting together another monster game, catching 9 passes for 158 yards and a touchdown. There was one drive in the second half where Welker caught 4 passes, with all of them being more than 5 yards and a couple of them going for a first down. And it's not as if Welker is beating Routt on these plays. Routt is genuinely nowhere to be found. He's on the field, but he's on the opposite side of the field covering someone else. He's not covering the best receiver on the Patriots and the only guy that Tom Brady seems to be throwing the ball well to during this game. Tom Brady did not play that well against the Raiders. When throwing to anyone not named Wes Welker, Brady finished the game going 7 for 16 with 68 yards passing and a pass rating of 77.1, which is pretty bad. That's lower than what Hue Jackson, Kyle Orton, Kevin Kolb, and Mark Sanchez, just to name a few, posted over the course of that 2011 season. But when throwing to Welker, Brady was 9 for 14 with 158 yards, a touchdown, and a passer rating of 126, which is, a pretty substantial difference, and would easily be the #1 passer rating in the NFL if that was over the course of the season. When targeting Wes Welker, he was the best quarterback out there. When not targeting Welker, he was worse than Kevin Kolb. Targeting anyone not named Welker, and Brady was mediocre at best. Targeting Welker, and Brady was a god whose superpower was destroying the black hole. Which raises the obvious question. If you have the best receiver in football on one side of the field, and on the other side, you have one of the highest paid cornerbacks in football who knows how to cover and break up passes and stay with wideouts, and you don't put that cornerback on the wide receiver for the entire game, and the wideout puts up 158 yards and is the only productive wideout all day and might be the biggest reason why the game became a blowout, why didn't you put the corner on him? Why would you not adjust? Nothing was working. This feels like the definition of insanity, where you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. But luckily for us, Hue Jackson had an answer. His galaxy brain is something that we mortals cannot comprehend. Because when a reporter asked Jackson about what the heck this strategy was and why he wouldn't change anything whatsoever with how he covered Wes Welker, he gave an extremely thorough, detailed, and in-depth answer. Turns out, he gave a pretty good reason for not putting route on Welker. Because as Jackson said, if we needed to, we could have. That wasn't the issue. Seriously. If we needed to, we could have, but that wasn't the issue. I'm sorry, what? What do you mean that wasn't the issue? Dude, did you watch the game? The man had 158 yards receiving and 9 catches and was the only guy that Tom Brady looked comfortable throwing to all day. If a guy puts up that many yards and has that many catches and scores a touchdown and puts up numbers that could have been worse and easily could have been double-digit catches for over 200 yards, if not for the fact that the Patriots barely threw in the fourth quarter and were just bleeding clock and running it down because they jumped out to such a big lead, thanks in part to your ineptitude, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that this is, in fact, a pretty big issue. It's like if you lose a baseball game 2-0 because you only got 2 hits off the opposing pitcher in 8 innings and you say afterwards, going up against him wasn't the issue. The offense wasn't the issue today. I think based on my eyes it was, but it could be me. Maybe I need to get my glasses checked out. I also love how you said that if you needed to make the adjustment, that you could have, as if it was that easy. And yet, you just didn't do that the entire time. Your rationale for not putting route, your best corner, and one of the highest paid defenders in the game, on Welker, was because you didn't need to, and everything was going great. And if you wanted to, you could have done it and could have shut him down, but you just decided not to do that. Am I the only one just completely baffled by that? Am I the only one that has a headache trying to decipher that statement? It's like me flunking out of college for poor grades and me saying, if I needed to get better grades, I could have. That wasn't the issue. It kind of was. Any other coach who said anything along those lines and said that we didn't try to stop Wes Welker and switch anything up to stop the guy that has over 150 receiving yards would be crucified and would be looked at as if they had 5 heads. But for Hue Jackson, I guess it's just another day in the park. It's not hard to see why the man went 1-31 over a 2-season stretch with the Browns with crap like this. I'm not saying that if the Raiders put route on Welker, that they win the game, or anything like that, or even that it makes a difference, because that's a hypothetical situation. But I highly doubt that it gets worse than what we actually got. The lesson here is that Hue Jackson cannot coach. The man will never get another head coaching job in NFL history, again, for very obvious reasons. And it's not hard to see why, considering how inept he was at every aspect of being the man in charge. One of the best traits that a coach can have is the ability to adjust and assess the situation. Clearly, Hue Jackson failed at that, and quite miserably, I might add. Clearly, of all the ways to stop Wes Welker, refusing to put your best corner on him, even after he's torched you the entire game, and almost proudly saying afterwards that Welker wasn't a problem and they could have stopped him at any time, almost like a person addicted to cigarettes who insists he can stop smoking at any time, is not the right way to approach the matter. It wasn't easy to beat the Patriots in their heyday, and when you're Hue Jackson and you're coaching like this, it's almost impossible. Because on this day in 2011, due to Jackson's inept coaching, the only hole larger than the black hole in the stadium was the gaping hole in Oakland's secondary and in Hue Jackson's brain. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.